Cool, so I think we can probably get started. And any latecomers, this is going to be recorded anyway. So firstly, just to kick it off, I'm Timothea, one of the co-founders of FORE alongside Merv and Andreas, and we also have some of our core team here. We have Simon, Harry, and a few others should be joining as well. So really grateful and excited to have you guys here for our first AMA. But before we jump in to answer your questions, I wanted to give some background to the team itself. And we don't want to use this as an opportunity to talk about our backgrounds and achievements and why they make us best suited for the task at hand, because ultimately you can find this information on our about page. And rather than just reiterating bios, we would rather focus on what we think makes us best suited to build a successful and sustainable company. And ultimately, that's our values. And over the past year, our team has grown from 3 founders to over 20 people now. And in that time, one thing has remained constant for us is our values. And we've worked really hard to articulate our value system and really ingrain this in how we operate day to day. And we really believe that if we focus on building a team with the right value system that's founded on transparency, honesty, low ego, and data-driven decisions, we can really iterate our way to success, build almost any solution, and most importantly, build the necessary trust with our employees, our partners, our users, and our community members. And one of you in the submit questions form, one of the questions was, what is our strongest advantage that will make us lead the market? And I truly believe it to be that. It's our values and our guiding principles of decentralization, real world problem orientation, transparency, and sustainable incentive structures. So before we jump into questions, I would just love to kick off with where we are now and where we're going. So Merv, I think it'd be best if you can kick that off.
Yeah, great, and I think that's a great introduction. And if I may, just kind of add a word or two kind of on our value system before I kind of go to where we are currently and kind of what the plan is over the next 3, 6, 12 months. In terms of the values, I mean, ultimately, what we want to do is be able to address real world frictions in high growth markets and do that in a decentralized way. So basically finding situations in which there are large and growing markets in the real world and centralized entities that are creating inefficiencies in those markets. And if we're able to kind of identify and orient ourselves, given the values that Timothea kind of mentioned, along those types of problems, then we think that really exciting opportunities lay at hand. And then it really kind of comes down to quality execution of the team, to be able to provide that type of product. And that's really what we've been kind of focused on, over the course of the last year. And so leading into Timothea's question in terms of kind of where we are and where we're headed, the last year or so has been really focused on building a values-oriented team, and then secondarily, building a product that we can iterate on. Now, the forefathers, who have been with us since very early on, they'll tell you that we really value feedback, and we've been iterating, on the product with them. And we've kind of gotten it to a point now where we want to launch it to a broader group of people. So you're all part of that, and what we want to do initially here is basically launch a test net. And that'll be happening early this week, early this coming week, and basically get you all to feedback and input on that product. From that point on, we'll be implementing a lot of your feedback, kind of digesting that, and then creating the appropriate roadmap, and ultimately aiming toward TGE and token launch, at the end of Q1, early Q2. So I think that kind of gives a little bit of a roadmap at least in terms of the immediate future. So, Timothy, I'll pass it over back to you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Merv. So we've got, I know you've touched on the timelines, so we've got a ton of questions and not that much time, so let's get stuck in. We've grouped your questions into community, token, and product. So as we just launched our community on Monday, I think it's best that we jump into some of those questions first. So starting with a simple one, but one that I think is really important for us to articulate, is what best summary or strapline could the community use to spread the word of FORE? How do you sum up FORE in a sensational sentence? And there's really two things that I would focus on here is what are we doing and how does it benefit you or who you're talking to? And FORE itself is a people-powered protocol, creating the incentive models to harness and reward the wisdom of the crowd in order to bring real-world data to the blockchain. And FORE Predict, what you'll all be using from Monday, that is the first decentralized app built on the protocol, and it's building on this infrastructure to create people-powered predictions that users can create, participate in, and validate any market on any real-world event and are rewarded for doing so. So two things are constant here and constant throughout all solutions that we'll be building is harnessing the power of people and creating solutions that actually reward them in return. So that is how I would sum up FORE. The next question that we've seen come up a few times is around partnership, as there often is in the space. Partnership is always an important factor for every project. So who are your partners and what are the benefits you get from those relationships? Andreas, I think it's best if you jump in on that one.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Cynthia. So currently we're exploring a few different partnerships in the sports industry, gaming, and also hospitality. But what we aren't focused on acquiring or is the partnerships purely just for optics or purely just to have partnerships for partnerships' sake. What we're really focusing on is what we call strategic partnerships, who share our values and will also support the ecosystem that we're building and ultimately bring users to the platform. So as we form these partnerships and the talks get further, we'll keep you updated. Thanks, Cynthia.
Cool. So another one that is a pretty important one is what do you think is the best strategy that you can do to bring more users into your project and what makes you feel confident about the survival and sustainable success? So we could have a whole AMA on this. I would actually like to at some point. But really our primary target audience groups are due to the nature of our initial solution, DeFi natives and crypto bettors. And in the long term, we plan to tap into the kind of traditional betting audience in order to scale, but we are acutely aware of the friction involved in onboarding those users into DeFi for the time being. But to tap into these users, there are a number of key steps or phases we need to consider, and our go-to-market strategy can be simplified into one sentence, really. Build a community, convert community into token holders into users, and users into players. And the reason I separate users and players as a distinction is ultimately, we need creators and analysts to provide the necessary infrastructure for there to be various liquid markets and for payout to be resolved quickly. But it's the players who are bringing in the revenue to the platform. So our kind of end goal for all our user acquisition strategy is to convert everyone into a player. And ultimately, focusing on these phases allows us to provide the right messaging, the right stages of our user acquisition journey in line with our development and product roadmap, as well as reducing friction. But really, the most important point I want to get across is that regardless of the phase or campaign or the target audience, we want to solve real-world problems for our users, and data is critical in understanding them and their needs in order to bring them into our ecosystem. So we've spent a lot of time developing a really robust analytics function, currently using thousands of data points to analyze traits, interests, demographics, online behavior and protocol data to really test our key hypothesis in regards to who our target audiences are. I mentioned DeFi natives and crypto bettors, but that can be there are subcategories within that. For example, someone who's regularly tweeting about NFL, but also has Matic in their wallet. So we have a number of different hypothesis groups that we will be targeting over the course of the next few months to really test our hypotheses in regards to who they are, what resonates with them, how to convert them into users, and how we can continually optimize our marketing and product in order to acquire them and onboard them as a long-term user. So, well, as I said, there's a lot more that we could go into on this. Would really love to set up an AMA on community and marketing initiatives itself, but just so that we can touch on other areas as well today, let's jump into the FORE token. So we had a question on the FORE tokenomics. Someone said, what about the FORE tokenomics in the website? I don't see any percentage about the tokenomics. By the way, they are there. It's foreprotocol.io/tokenomics. But Merv, I think it'd be worthwhile you going into a bit more detail there on the token itself.
Yeah, sure. Basically, the purpose of the token is, to provide utility on the FORE predict part of the protocol, and basically what that means is it's a means of contributing and interacting with the prediction markets and its related functionality. So, really our focus has been, building a product that can serve that utility and really fill a need in that market. So, starting next week when, a broader set of folks will be able to access the protocol, at least the testnet, you'll kind of notice that all of the markets are settled in the ERC20 token called FORE token. And basically, the reason for that is that it serves a few purposes and ultimately kind of enables our tokenomics. And what I mean by that is where other competitors and previous prediction markets have failed, well, it's been a few areas, but one of which is the fact that the markets are settled in a separate currency. And because of that, be it with Bitcoin or be it with Ethereum or a stable coin, the challenge there is you cannot facilitate quality incentive structures, unless you kind of are able to design the entire ecosystem. And if we look at previous prediction markets, part of the challenge has been that they can't create those quality incentive structures. So we've taken an approach where what we want to do is back solve from the functionality that we would want as users, and that ultimately addresses the friction in these real world markets that are large and growing. And so for us, the way that we approach that is, by having the FORE token as the currency that settles these markets, we're able to actually create hyper-deflationary tokenomics, meaning that tokens are being removed from circulation in proportion to the activity on the protocol. And what that means is with every FORE token or every fraction of a FORE token that's contributed, some proportion of that is burned. In other words, it's removed from circulation permanently. It's sent to a dead wallet, to be most accurate. And what that means is the more interaction, the more markets that are created, participated in, the more analysts NFTs that are minted and transferred, we have these core burn facilitating features. And by virtue of that, we can benefit the entire community. So going back to where we kind of started this conversation in terms of what it is that we're trying to build, and it's really around incentive structures. It's about creating the right incentive structures for decentralization, and in this case, in the predictions, in the predictions world. And the way that we're doing that to benefit the entire community is really by instituting these hyper-deflationary tokenomics. We think that benefits everyone, and we think that that's ultimately what the blockchain is about. creating these kind of decentralized, more democratized products where you're removing middlemen that really provide only counterparty risk, if anything. And so ultimately, that's really what our tokenomics are really kind of focused around, this notion of deflationary tokenomics and and whatever what's required in order to implement that. And then the other part of it is really around incentivizing the correct types of behaviors. And what I mean by that is token releases are extended and very long vesting schedules. And you can see that at the URL that Timothea mentioned. And all of that is really in an effort to align incentives, right? We want the team to be aligned with the community in terms of building a quality product and growing this product over time. There's no, for just as an example, there are no token releases for the team on day one or in year one. So it's these types of incentives that really align along a common interest we think are very important, and we designed our entire tokenomic structure around these principles. So again, that's one of those questions we can go into in quite a bit of depth, but I'll pause there and pass it back to you, Timothea, unless you have something to add.
Well, I'm actually going to move up a question because it kind of ties into what you're talking about. So someone's question was, is there a staking feature? Like the more you stake for, the higher chances of winning. We've obviously seen a lot of questions about this, but I just want to preface this with many existing staking or passive income models that we've seen over the last couple of years have turned out to be pretty unsustainable because of their inflationary tokenomics, which essentially supersedes a lot of the value that's captured by someone who's staking. And a question someone asked earlier in the chat is around holder revenue share. So we do not provide holder revenue share for FORE token because that is not a token utility for us, because providing revenue share is essentially providing dividends, which classes FORE as a security. And staking models themselves are increasingly coming under fire from a regulatory perspective. So we've worked extensively with our legal team over the last year to really ensure that FORE is a utility token in line with existing and upcoming regulation. But we are building incentive models, and it's important for us to be able to reward the community, our users, for their activity. So instead of minting new tokens arbitrarily for staking rewards, which a lot of projects do, what we do offer is a redistribution of platform fees for productive activity on the protocol. So whether that be creating or validating markets, and it's not passive income in the kind of traditional sense, but as I've said, those typically have turned out to be quite unsustainable models. But what we are doing is providing revenue generating opportunities for productive activity in the form of our hyperdeflationary FORE token. So the next question then would be, can you tell us how to purchase FORE token when we have pre-sale, private sale, and public sale events, and how to be involved in this? So Andreas, if you want to jump in on that.
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia. Sorry, I was on mute there. So a portion of the private is going to be set aside for participation by people who are most involved and bring a lot to the community, the protocol, and the ecosystem. And it's pretty much as simple as that. FORE really embraces decentralization, and part of that is we want to ensure that the people who provide value to the protocol and want to build with the team are able to participate in the building. We just kind of think that's kind of makes sense, and it's the fair way to go. So token generation event, as Merv and Timothy have both mentioned, is set for the end of Q1, start of Q2. And we're currently in discussion with a whole bunch of launch pads. And as we get further in those discussions, we'll provide you guys with more details.
So that was kind of fuzzy for me, so I'm just going to do a TLDR just in case it was for anyone else. There is availability for community to be involved in our private rounds. But again, as per our ethos on ensuring productive activity and rewarding productive activity, it's based on the level of involvement and value that can be added to the community and FORE's efforts. So as Andreas said, the TGE is set for Q2. So the next question I think makes sense to jump into is, what are the ways that your project generates profit or revenue in order to sustain your project? What is its revenue model? How can it be mutually beneficial for the participant and the project? So again, Andreas, I was going to ask you to jump in there, but conscious of potential mic issues, so perhaps I'll just jump in there quickly. Really a fundamental weakness that we've seen for blockchain projects is an unsustainable fee versus reward model. And we last year undertook a 9-month kind of research initiative so that we could develop FORE's tokenomics, as well as determining optimal pricing, fees, and burn rate in line with our projected prediction and transaction volume, so that we can really ensure the sustainability and self-sufficiency of the protocol. So a 5% maintenance fee is imposed on all market contributions. 1.5% is taken as FORE Protocol revenue, 1%, as Merv mentioned, is burned, and the rest is redistributed to users. Additionally, as we are the first NFT-based prediction protocol, we've built our own marketplace on which people can mint, buy, and sell analyst NFTs in order to validate markets. So every FORE locked into an NFT will be removed from circulation as well. But these NFTs can only be bought and sold on the FORE marketplace. So it ensures that we can control the market there, receive all fees and royalties on NFTs with utility on the protocol. So I think it makes sense for us to jump into the platform itself. I know we're
before we do, and I think it's related, but maybe I can just jump in with that last point, and then it's also related to a question that was asked previously about staking of tokens. So the way that the validation model works on FORE Predict is essentially the user is able to lock a certain amount of FORE tokens within an NFT that they mint, and that locked amount basically determines their proportion of the validated reward pool for a market that's validated. So in a way, it's not staking, right? Because what's happening is, it's essentially a vote on your expected skill, as an analyst, and as you validate more and more markets, of your favorite team or of your favorite type of event, then that locked amount is compounding. So there's incremental value for early users, to be more and more active. And as people have that incentive to be more and more active, more and more tokens are being removed from circulation, both from the contributions, or in other words, the locking of the FORE tokens within the NFT, but then also within the contributions of the markets themselves. So then there becomes this flywheel, or this kind of exponential effect that we think really benefits everyone. And overall, what we want to do is remove centralized entities, from these processes, and replace them with smart contract technology and communities of people that are driven by shared incentive models, and incentive models that really drive quality behavior on the protocol. We think that's a really powerful dynamic, and that's really what we're trying to embrace here, and that's what we've done. So we're excited to open up the product to the broader community, or at least a select kind of group of people that have been selected, and kind of launching it and getting some incremental feedback there. So I just wanted to add that, Timothy, and connect those dots.
Well, thank you, and hopefully someone can knock Leon off the top spot, as he's currently the king validator on the testnet. So I think it makes sense to just jump into the platform itself now. Again, as I said, conscious of time. So One question is many projects look great only on white paper and roadmap, but face a lot of difficulties when trying to implement the project mission and end up failing. I would agree with this. Most projects come to market with little more than a promise and a white paper, and some projects launch without even getting much further. I know I've invested in a few, but we know that the launch first, build later model really is not going to work in this market. People need and deserve to see something tangible. So with that in mind, we spent the last year bootstrapping development ourselves as a team so that we can come to market with a fully functional MVP. As we've said, we are launching our testnet on Monday and plan to use the next few months to really iterate and build with our community. But the infrastructure and its first application has already been created. So for me, failing in to deliver what we've set out in our white paper or roadmap is not an issue because we've already built that. So that would lead me on to our next question, which is the project built from scratch, especially smart contract, or did you fork some code bases from other projects? So Merv, if you want to touch on that one.
Yeah, that's a straightforward one. Yeah, we built FORE from the ground up. Every piece of functionality is really thought of and from. I kind of hate this term now because it's like a Silicon Valley buzzword, but really thinking from first principles, right? And building from the ground up and saying, well, how should something like this work? What makes sense, right? What does the literature tell us? And the research tell us on behavior in this context, and how do we kind of factor that in? How do we potentially provide value to longer term strategic partners in a unique way, and really kind of and back solving from that, and really thinking about things from a logical perspective, and focusing on growing the pie, and not just trying to capture the most amount that a team or an individual can, because we've seen kind of how that ends up. So much of this really kind of comes down to where this conversation began, which is the values of the team that we've assembled, and we think that's so important because everything really kind of revolves around trust, and at least when it comes to the team, and for us to kind of be able to build something in the long term that really makes sense and is viable, and the product itself obviously needs to be trustless in the context of smart contracts and auditability, but the reality is, what we need to kind of where we've been focused on is growing the pie for productive users in this ecosystem. And by doing so, we think that, we can create a really powerful community around this product. And we can, really capture the casual fantasy, football, fantasy NBA, fantasy, insert sport or activity, and also the kind of casual predictor, and really kind of create a new activity that's a hybrid of these things, in a new context that's Web3 related, and we're really excited about that vision. We think that there's a lot to do there. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of addresses it, but long story short, I mean, we've really built this product from the ground up, and without getting too technical, I mean, of course, there are some base level smart contracts, that from a safety and security perspective, best practice is not to make certain adjustments to certain base level smart contracts, but all of the core functionality is really built. Every line of code has been written ourselves.
As you were talking, I was actually reminded of a time, I think it's about a year ago now, where Merv, Simon, and James, we were basically sketching out what the validation model would look like on my Windows. So I'll try and find that picture and share. But yeah, really,
that's right.
did build from the ground up. So quick one, touching on what you just mentioned, Merv, is about security. Have we been audited? How strongly built is your security in place?
Yep. I think that kind of dovetails well with what we were just talking about. So just taking a step back, we think about security much more broadly than a smart contract audit, and I think that you need to, as really just an individual kind of operating these days on the internet, and then and especially for for team members of businesses that kind of operate in the space. To me, the kind of most important thing is related to having a mindset around security. And again, going back to the ethos and the value system here, what we are focused on is, bringing on people that we know we can trust, in terms of, we've worked in the past, and we have had long-term personal and professional relationships, and the ability to kind of assemble a team that has that priority. Now, it all starts from that, right? And then once you assemble a team that has a security mindset and a security focus, then the next step and the next focus is, what are the processes and procedures that need to be in place in order to protect the product? And there are a variety of vectors that one needs to think about, and we won't go into detail into that for a variety of reasons. And each of those needs a strategy and a plan. And that's the effective way to kind of think about that problem. And so thinking about it purely from hey, are your smart contracts audited? I mean, yes, that's one part of the solution, and that is something that is part of a broader security plan and strategy. But I think it's important to highlight that is just one piece. And as we've seen in the past, there have been numerous smart contracts that have been audited that ultimately have had security problems. And so, when we look at that, we have to look at that realistically and say, yes, we need to be able to get independent third-party expert opinions on our security of our smart contracts, of course, and that's part of the plan. But there are many, many other things and many other strategies and activities that need to happen in order to make sure that it's a holistically handled problem. And so, long-winded answer to what is somewhat of a direct question, but basically, yes, we intend to get a smart contract audit. But suffice to say that there are many other things that we're looking at as well.
Yeah, I'll also add that obviously over the course of the next few months, there's going to be a number of changes to the protocol itself based off user feedback. So once that feedback has been implemented, then the protocol will be audited before coming to market in mainnet. So more specifically to FORE, I guess this question is quite vague, but will the team also provide some markets? If yes, with liquidity or without? Andreas, do you want to see if your microphone's any better?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, better? Great. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, we thought a lot about this, but initially for the testnet, I think we will start making markets to set an example. But when we're live, we won't. And the reason for this is because the company is not a predictions market maker. That's not what we're doing. We're merely the protocol that's been built, and the smart contracts facilitate all the community creation, participation, and validation of the markets. So in short, we're not the house, but during the testnet, we will be in there. We will be participating and also trying to sort of break the protocol and get the most out of the learning experience that we have for these 2 months.
Yeah, that leads on to a connecting question actually, is can you create a help section where users can find some ideas around market creation with descriptions, rules they can add to their bets? So We are acutely aware of the necessary learning curve that we need to address in market creation to ensure a good user experience for all. We want to ensure quality of markets for the creator and the player and the validator itself, so that we have as few disputed or invalid markets as possible, because that doesn't benefit anyone in the ecosystem. So for the time being, there will be a lot of focus on educating new users on how to create markets effectively. We already have a section set up within Discord. If you take a look at the creator forum, where essentially the team and forefathers and wider community will be helping advise on how best to set up markets for effective resolution. But we do plan to apply the learnings from this to the protocol itself when live, and making sure that we have the right signposting, the right tool tips, showing what good looks like. So that is a core focus of ours over the test phase, is also the kind of the education piece there. While talking about the mechanics itself, a great question. Will there be a supervisor where we can complain to regarding the market itself? So we do have a decentralized dispute mechanism, which is managed by our high guard. Again, we have talked extensively about how best to manage this in order to have the quality markets that are effectively resolved, but still maintain decentralization on the protocol. So that will be managed by a top tier of analysts who have increased their reputation score significantly, proved loyalty to the platform, and they will be managing the dispute. But anyone can raise a dispute on a market. We do have a dispute fee, so that to prevent malicious disputes or kind of ineffective disputes. So finally, on the platform itself, I think this is a really good one to close this section out on, is a question on oracles. So how do you ensure that all results generated are fair and transparent in a peer-to-peer predictions platform? Will you be using a special mechanism like Chainlink or similar? Merv, probably best if you jump in on this one. You're muted, by the way. I don't know if you were talking. If not, I can.
Yeah, no, I was just needed an opportunity to unmute. But so I think the way that we've thought about building FORE is around this concept of decentralization, and this concept of creating the right incentive structures to drive the right behavior. So by virtue of those two things, FORE itself is the oracle. And so we've created the right incentives and the right infrastructure where NFT holders and minters are able to gain fee or gain a reward, and essentially that's paid for as a proportion of the protocol fees by validating markets. And if a dispute takes place and a validator is determined to have acted maliciously or validated a market incorrectly, there's a penalty to that NFT, right? And so the staking of an NFT is really similar to a vote, and toward some outcome. And the power of this is really can't be understated, because really, while Chainlink has, and I use Chainlink as an example, but it could be, a variety of Oracle providers. There's a limited set of data that you can kind of tap into based on, whatever it is that they're tracking or collecting. But the key here is, in terms of FORE, we want to facilitate lots of different types of markets, and really a peer-to-peer nature from A to Z. And the way you do that is you empower the community to be the validators themselves, and you create the right infrastructure in order to do that. And that's essentially what we've done. So we're excited to again to roll that out, and to get everyone's comments and feedback in terms of how they think it's all going. But overall, for us, we're really excited about this new kind of concept of community kind of oriented validation in a predictions market context.
Yeah, I think this also really creates an opportunity for us to scale horizontally as well into other sectors, particularly from a B2B perspective, by over time with usage of the platform, creating this really valuable decentralized oracle via our network of analysts that are able to really provide an additional data set of really granular data that would not be necessarily found by oracles elsewhere. So finally, I just wanted to address some of the recommendations and suggestions, because although they weren't questions, they were really quite insightful and useful. So just want to call them out. So we had a few other suggestions or requests that we are pleased to say are already in place. So being able to share a market with a specific link and the relevant metadata, a validator ranking list, as you'll see when you have access to the platform, because part of our strategy is around gamifying predictions. And we realized that how people are driven by driven by social effects of seeing their wallet next to someone else's, in turn increasing activity on the platform. Filtering of markets, user-friendly tracking for your own bets and markets, as well as again the ranking of top monthly users for different activities. So we are also working on a number of other areas that aren't live yet, but were suggested. One being a chat bar within the web page, or a comment section within the market for us. Maybe touch on this, but the whole concept of FORE initially came from a social sports book where people can interact with each other, place outcomes against other users, but also kind of discuss the markets at hand too. So that's an important element for us to integrate into the platform. As well as, there's so much more that we're working on, including different market structures. Right now, it's kind of a binary parimutuel pool structure, but there are other market structures that we've already built but have not deployed yet, because we want to determine kind of the priority from our user base before implementing that into our roadmap. So unless there's any other questions, I appreciate we've gone over time, so thank you guys for still sticking with us. We've tried to get through as many questions as possible in a short amount of time, but if your question wasn't answered, we will be hosting these regularly. Just before I close out, I just want to reiterate that our hackathon is live in line with our public testnet from Monday. So everyone who applied before yesterday will gain access Monday, and everyone else will be added incrementally each week. And we're not just looking for bugs, but input into what you want to see from a predictions platform, and really what would keep you on a platform like this, as whether that be market structures or the user experience itself. If you're not a developer or a seasoned beta tester, it doesn't matter, because we're still looking for feedback across kind of a range of different profiles and user types. And we'll also be rewarding users for performance throughout the event, throughout the campaign, for different kind of event-specific campaigns as well. So we will be providing regular updates on key feedback and performance and how that tracks to our development roadmap. And yeah, I just thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for joining us. We're just 5 days in from launching our community, and there's so much ahead of us. So really grateful to have you on this journey and to start getting you onto the platform itself that we've spent the last year building.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that, and just want to extend my appreciation for your time here, and also as we've been kind of focusing building a values oriented team, we're really excited to extend that to our community, and really this concept of building together in a decentralized way, and collectively just being rewarded for productive activity, and doing that in a community driven, values kind of oriented way, I think is really the ethos that decentralization and the blockchain kind of were built on. And somehow in the last few years, things have kind of gotten away from that, but we're really excited to try to bring that back, and really be a team that is a good steward of the direction and strategy of this product and of the future, and building collectively with this community and as it grows. So as Timothy mentioned, we're just a few days in, so much more to do, and so much great traction, and activity, and I just want to thank you all for that. You guys have just been great. So really looking forward to where we are in a few years, and really kind of long term, seeing what we can all build together. So thank you again.